This is a Yamaha MT-07 Tracer, a Tracer 700 or whatever you want to refer to it as. The exciting part is that this touring bodywork rests on the heart and soul of one of the most loved little naked bikes ever created. But before I get to share all its weird and wonderful features with you, I'd like to share with you how I got the opportunity to spend a few days with it. About a month ago, I received an email from Bike SA. You know, the best-selling motorcycling magazine in Africa. I was pretty surprised and took them up on their offer to meet for coffee, where they proposed the idea of my very own column in their magazine. I could picture it immediately and didn't give it a second thought, which even surprised me because even as recently as a year ago, I would never have dreamt of taking up something to do with writing. But what does this mean for my YouTube channel, and how will it affect you guys? Well, I can't stress enough that it will only be in good ways, for people from all corners of the globe, not just local South Africans. The beauty of YouTube is that you can target everyone in the world, except maybe China, but that's their problem. I have no intentions now, nor have I ever tried to target South Africans exclusively. My content has been intended for anyone who is willing to put up with my accent, and that definitely won't change now. So let me give you the pros. This means I'll get more access to motorcycles like this Yamaha MT-07 Tracer, for example, which means more videos on more bikes, and bikes that I would never have normally had access to or gone for. And you get even more content, not in the form of videos, because I still plan on making one video a week, but in the form of my column in the magazine. So, if you're as excited about this next challenge as I am, the magazine is available digitally online anywhere in the world, where my first column will be in their August issue. And obviously, if you're South African, it's just a fun bike ride away off to the store to grab one. But anyway, now that I have an MT-07 Tracer in my garage for a few days, there is one thing that I have to do with it. If you've seen any of my videos, you'll know that I never stray far from sport bikes. In fact, the furthest I've been from the sport bike comfort zone is a couple of naked bikes. So this is the first touring-focused bike I've ever ridden, which means I had to go for a long cruise to one of my favorite places around to see what it was all about. This is a nice climb that I often come to cycle up, but I've never actually brought a motorcycle here. To be honest, I'm not sure why. But when I heard I was getting to film a middleweight sport tourer, I instantly wanted to bring it here for some reason. This isn't intended to be a review, so I'll just subtly mention that it was even less of a handful through these tight corners than my bicycle. Whether you've been exposed to a lot of bikes like this or not, I still think there are some cool features that you don't see on every bike. At first glance, this bike doesn't look that exciting. But when you start to move around it and start to get some different angles of it, it starts to look pretty aggressive in a touring kind of way. You probably also won't think that it has anything to do with an MT-07 at first glance. But if you look a little closer, you'll notice these very familiar headers escaping out the front of the engine. And I love how the MT range uses the headers within the design of the bike, and they aren't just boring straight pipes coming out. It also shares the exact same gauge cluster as the MT-07, which is perfect. I don't think there has ever been a normal LCD display with such a good layout. Everything is exactly where you would expect it. There's no hunting around to find your revs or what your current gear is. It might be obvious that if it shares the same engine as the MT-07, that it will have the same engine covers, but either way, I still absolutely love the design of them and the color of them, because it's these little details that count. front. And lastly, I love the black plastic strip down the middle of the tank. You would think that a piece of plastic down the center of a tank would be tacky, but somehow it pulls it off and it just adds to its character. Keeping with MT comparisons, but in this case MT-09 comparisons and not the 7, it has the same tail light as the original MT-09. And as much as I loved it on that bike, I think it suits this even a little bit better because of its size. The turning circle is so good that it can keep me entertained for hours. With the odd shape of this screen, it does two things that you would never expect a screen of this shape to do. Firstly, it fits the look of this bike brilliantly, making it look like a bigger bike than it actually is. And secondly, it could teach Moses a thing or two about parting wind around a rider. Not to mention its pretty cool party trick of being adjustable. Unfortunately, it's a bit too involved to do while you're riding, but it can be done, and I think it is possible to do it at a lengthy traffic light. I would be the first to point out how unnecessary handguards are on a street motorcycle, but after one cold morning ride, I wanted to take back every rude thing I'd ever said about them. It is actually really nice not to have that cold air hit your hands dead on. And by this point, you've probably already noticed the indicators hiding underneath the handguard and come up with your own opinion about it. But personally, I actually really like it. I think it's a good way to integrate them, and I always like integration. I think it's also at the perfect spot for other road users to spot, unlike a lot of other bikes. And you probably would never want to swap them out on a bike like this anyway. And quite possibly the coolest feature on this bike that you'll find sport bike riders spending hard to justify amounts of money on to get them on their bike are these little rubber tank grips on the side here. Personally, I haven't noticed them while riding, but I do think it is awesome, and I think that these should come standard on all sport bikes. And I haven't seen this before.
Overall, this bike is far more fun than you would ever expect. It screams quality from the textures on the materials and how everything is tucked up nicely. It's a bike you might not even be able to buy in some countries. And even if they are sold, they're very rare, which is surprising given how competent it is. It got me hooked on the idea of touring. It took a displacement class that could be seen as a bit boring and made it lively. It crept up to an illegal speed with relative ease. But what amazed me was how effortlessly it maintained that speed. It feels like a bike that wants to convince you that it's all grown up and is serious. But at heart, it's just a playful bike that goes beyond what you would expect. But anyway, that's pretty much it. If you want a real review, keep your eye out on the next few issues of Bike SA magazine, where I'll also be doing more with the Tracer in my column. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next ride.